Now for, and I mean it this time, I mean it, super serial, fast video, okay? Just a quickie. Once again, Wolf Street on fire. Who bought the $1.36 trillion of new U.S. national debt over just the past 12 months? Russia, Japan, and the Fed dumped. China hung in there, but who actually bought? Official foreign investors, this would be central banks, governments, etc., and private sector foreign investors held $6.21 trillion of U.S. Treasury securities at the end of the year, which is up by $61 billion from a year earlier, according to the Treasury Department's TIC data released Wednesday afternoon. But over the same period, the U.S. gross national debt, fired up by a stupendous spending binge, soared by a breathtaking $1.36 trillion. So who bought this $1.36 trillion in new debt? The largest holder of marketable Treasury securities remains China, whose holdings in June fell by $4.4 billion from May to $1.18 trillion total, within the same range since August 2017, despite escalating threats and counter-threats over trade. But Japan has been systematically reducing its Treasury holdings. They peaked at the end of 2014 at $1.24 trillion. In June, its holdings dropped by $18.4 billion from May to $1.03 trillion, the lowest since October 2011. Russia never held as many Treasury securities as China and Japan, but it stands out because it has liquidated 90% of its holdings since May 2013. At the time, it held $153 billion in treasuries. Then it started shedding them. By March, it was down to $96.1 billion. April, it dumped $47.4 billion. In May, it liquidated another $33.8 billion of its holdings and disappeared from the TIC's list of the 33 largest foreign holders of treasuries. That was a milestone. In June, it just hung on to what it had and ended the month unchanged at $14.9 billion. The runners-up, perhaps not so ironically, of the 12 largest holders of U.S. treasuries after China and Japan, 7 are tax havens for foreign corporate and or individual entities. Brazil, Ireland, UK, City of London, Switzerland, Luxembourg, Cayman Islands, Hong Kong, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, Belgium, India, and Singapore. But then at the end of all this, it says the Americans did it. By the end of June, the U.S. gross national debt had reached $21.21 trillion, and which is up $1.36 trillion from June last year. Here's who bought all this paper over those 12 months. Foreign official and private sector holdings bought $61 billion, raising their stake to $6.21 trillion, or 29.3% of the total U.S. national debt. The U.S. government, pension funds, Social Security, etc., raised its stake by $263 billion, bringing debt held internally to $5.73 trillion, or 27% of the total. Federal Reserve shed $85 billion as part of the unwind, bringing its stash down to $2.38 trillion by the end of June, or 11.2% of total U.S. national debt. American institutional and individual investors, directly and indirectly, through bond funds, corporate or state pension funds, and other ways, I love other, owned $6.89 trillion, or 32.5% of the total U.S. debt at the end of June, having added $1.13 trillion to their stash over those 12 months. So that's who it was. American institutional and individual investors, directly and indirectly, through the bond funds, corporate or state pension. That's probably the big one. Pension or state, corporate or state pension funds. Wow. The Fed, Japan, Russia, and whoever might be selling, but Americans are buying avidly now that yields have come up substantially, with the 1 month yield at nearly 2%, the 1 year at 2.45, and the 2 year at 2.61. Then there's even a huge demand for long-term maturities, such as the 10-year yield, which is only 2.86%. If there was less demand, the yield would have to rise to lure new investors out of the woodwork. So it wasn't the rest of the world buying our garbage? No, let's dump it on the failing pension system. Let's give it to the pensioners that is unfunded. Now, that sounds like a great idea. Take care.